glad that you all are here. And can you all hear me okay? I tend to move back and forth from the mic, so if you have difficulty hearing me, I'll nudge myself back over here. I want to extend the greetings of peace to each and every one of you. And as Anna has indicated, we really are appreciative of the fact that you're here today. We understand that you're very busy. The work that you do is extremely important. I also understand that some of you have some cases that you may have to attend to right away, and so we understand if you have to leave. But I'll ask one favor. If you're leaving because of a case, if you could just kind of wave at me, then I'll know that you're not leaving because of something I said. Okay? The work, I want to start off this way before I get into, I want to make a few extemporaneous comments before I actually get into the PowerPoint. The work that you do and your peers do around the country, whether you represent child welfare or the health systems or schools or a provider, the courts, mental health, it's extremely important work, and it is extremely difficult work, and it is the kind of work that is plagued with a lot of constraints. Limited resources, not a lot of public understanding and appreciation for what you do, often limited information about the families that you have to provide services for, and the list goes on and on. Limited number of staff, large caseloads, large court dockets, and those kinds of things. But without you, I shudder to think what would be happening to children if we did not have systems in place like the ones that you represent. And in an earlier life, I had the privilege of starting and running a program in Missouri where our theme was, it takes a village to rear a child. And one of the questions that we asked then and we ask now is, what does it take to build a village? What does that village look like? Who are the stakeholders in those villages? And how are those villages constituted? How are those villages established? And one of the things that you'll see in the DVD that I think is extremely important is and get an answer to how some of these villages were actually constituted and the role that race has played in that process. So as we look through the course of the day at these issues, looking at the data and so forth, and trying to understand just what's happening in these villages and what's going on with these kids and how we can continue to serve them even better, we want you to be looking through the equity lens or the race lens. But in raising the issue about race, it can be very sensitive, very tricky. And so we want to stage this work together today, this learning exchange today. I don't think of this so much as a training, but more so as a learning exchange. We want to phase it into three parts. And those three parts are kind of rooted in these, or nested in these three learning objectives. And the first one is to introduce some key data, concepts, frameworks, some issues that are designed to help build your respective organization's capacity to have ongoing, courageous conversations about the intersection between race, equity, and the need for child welfare reform. Now, that's a mouthful. One of the reasons why we call this courageous conversation is because it does take courage to talk about race. And courage, of course, is not the absence of fear, but it's doing what we believe in and are doing the right thing in spite of it. And when we look at the data, the kind of data that Dave shared, it tells us that we need to pay attention to race. We need to look at the extent to which that has an impact on what happens to kids. Now, having said that, the idea of talking about race can be real scary for folks. It can raise a lot of angst. I don't mean scary like boogeyman kind of scary, but just scary about, okay, so where's this guy going with this? What's going to be the outcome? What are their purposes for bringing this up? What do we want to accomplish? And what's the tone of the discussion? And so I want to say to you that this experience together today, I hope you will find to be challenging in terms of our assumptions, but very respectful and safe in terms of respecting who we are, where we come from, and how we contribute to the growth and development of all children. And so, one of the things that I really want to try to emphasize here in terms of this courageous conversation piece is that there are at least three major range of emotions that come up when people hear these words. One might be described as something that sounds like this. We had the civil rights movement in the 60s. We did work in the 50s. Laws were passed. Things were dismantled to a large extent. Not totally, but to a large extent. And we need to just kind of get over it. You know, there's an indifference about the conversation, the need to have the conversation. And some of the persons who have embodied within them those kind of emotions might say, we need to just get over it. Let's quit talking about it. You know, we've done some work. Let the past go and move forward. And then another set of emotions would sound something like, might be described as shame and guilt, where after an analysis and observation of progress and retrenchment, things that have been done, things that have been left undone, excuse me, some may say, wow, there were some real injustices here that really need to be rectified, and not sure what we should do about it. And then another set is described maybe as anger and mistrust. A kind of feeling that ongoing conversations are useless because folks don't care. You know, the assumption is everybody knows what the problem is, nothing's being done, quote unquote, and so why bother? And what I want to say to you is that if anyone in the room feels those different things at different times, I want to say to you that I personally think that all of those emotions are valid. They're all real. They are part of who we are as individuals and families, institutions, and communities, and a nation. But what I want to challenge us to consider is, when is it appropriate to feel indifference and frustration about